At the age of around 8 or 9, I remember entering into Eden Cinemas to watch The Fellowship of the Ring. Friday night felt very similar to that night all those years ago, not because these movies have anything similar at all. They are completely different in themes, mood, genre, and style, but I left both cinemas feeling like I had just experienced a fraction of an incredibly fascinating world I would love to get engrossed into. And just as all those years ago I started reading the Lord of the Rings books, today I was convinced I wanted to start reading the Dune book. Hey guys, welcome back to Ad Lib Talk, and this is my review for Dune. Dune has long been called unfilmable by many. David Lynch had attempted a take on the impossible and in 1984 released his take on the complex book to mixed results. Many had called it a mess, with Roger Ebert famously calling it the worst movie of the year. There are the 2000 Sci-Fi Channel versions, which have been largely forgotten, and obviously Alejandro Jodorowsky's failed attempt at the making of a big screen Dune adaptation in the 1970s. The documentary, which released in 2014 about that failed attempt, was extremely popular too. The version of Dune we have now is directed by Denis Villeneuve, with screenplay by Villeneuve himself, John Spites, and Eric Roth. Now, no one can fault Villeneuve on his ambition and sheer brilliance he has with imagery in his movies. However, what Villeneuve has given us here is an absolute audiovisual masterpiece, and one that will be remembered for many years to come. But before we start with the actual review, don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and please do consider subscribing, as those are the two main ways you can help support my channel right here at Ad Lib Talk. Cheers, and let's get right into that review. So, the story of Dune follows our main protagonist, Paul Atreides, who lives in the distant future. The book, and naturally the movie itself, is set in the year 10,191, and human beings have spread out and colonized planets throughout the universe. Our story starts on the planet Caladan, with Duke Leto of the House Atreides, who is preparing to leave for a new role given to him by the Emperor. He will now become the governor of Arrakis, which is a desert planet which has the most important resource in the world, spice. Eventually, Duke Leto, together with the whole of his family, including Paul, and his army, arrive on Arrakis and set up there, replacing House Harkonnen, who have withdrawn from Arrakis on Shaddam's order, Shaddam being the Emperor. To give you more would fall into spoiler territory, but needless to say that things take a turn for the worse for Paul and the rest of his family, and the drama that ensues and the action is basically the first part of the Dune story. Now, let's start off with what makes Dune such a pleasure to watch. The visuals. It's breathtaking, it's awe-inspiring, it's majestic. It's sometimes even a little overwhelming, to be honest. Words cannot truly describe how impressive this movie is. Every single shot in the movie is curated with such care and love. The cinematography by Greg Fraser is truly out of this world. Excuse the pun there. And I'm really looking forward to his work in the upcoming Batman movie. This incredible cinematography, combined with truly spectacular visuals, make this one of, if not the most beautiful movies I have ever watched. We have been spoiled, I'm going to be honest. How can I go back to watching cheap, fake CGI after watching the masterpiece that were the visuals in this movie? There are many jaw-dropping moments here. The first time we see the sandworm, the arrival at the city of Arrakis, and so many more. Just every scene with a spaceship is just mind-blowing, just how good it all looks. The design choices for many of the things we see on screen are also on point. This can mean, as I said, the design of the massive spaceships that float gracefully, as well as the much smaller ornithopters the absolute massive scale of these sandworms, which were honestly both terrifying and impressive to see on a big screen. A big applause for Paul Lambert and everyone involved in the special effects and visuals in this movie. They truly did outdo themselves. Narratively, Villeneuve took the very smart decision to split this story into two. The movie opens with part one, and the final line is also quite clear. This is just the beginning. And so far, I can only say that the narrative, whilst not being too impressive, keeps the story flowing, manages to introduce us to the vast world that we have in front of us in an effective manner without forgetting our characters. Although it never becomes too thematically heavy, there are some pretty obvious topics it touches on, such as religion, the idea of Messiah, colonialism, the environment, and resource exploitation. There are some obvious parallels to sort of like the Soviet Union and so on, but these are never too prominent. The main focus here is the world, actual world itself. And this is another impressive aspect of this movie. How well Villeneuve introduces us to this massive world and explains what is going on, whilst avoiding sort of like this becoming an exposition fest. Obviously, there is exposition, there needs to be to introduce us to this world, but it's not too much. It's not overdone. Characters give us comments here and there, and these kind of comments help us understand better the world we are in. But you better be paying attention or you're going to miss out on vital information. For example, there are comments about the fighting, why they have to fight with swords, the fact that they have to fight with swords rather than use bullets, the slow blade penetrates much more effectively. So these kinds of comments you need to pay attention to or you're going to miss out on important details. Villeneuve also successfully does a lot of his storytelling through the visuals, so keep a sharp eye on what's going on screen and you'll catch a lot of small details that are really important for the storytelling here. Now, the characters who explore this world seem to be quite interesting, but as I said, are never the main focus for this movie. The movie takes a clear narrative path, focusing especially on Paul and his mother Jessica. And both Timothée Chalamet as well as Rebecca Ferguson bring their absolute A game here. Rebecca Ferguson was especially stunning in her role as both a mother and a member of the Bene Gesserit. There was one particular scene which really impressed me. As Paul experiences terrible pain through the Gom Jabbar, we see Jessica in a lot of pain herself as she struggles between both her roles, the role of a mother and a member of the Bene Gesserit. And this is one of the most interesting dynamics in the movie. The relationship between Paul and Jessica is very interesting and honestly never becomes boring. Oscar Isaac as Paul's father is Duke Leto Atreides. He's also quite good. I thought his performance was interesting enough. It was decent, and he does the best he can. He doesn't have too much material, but sort of there is an interesting dynamic there with his relationship with his son showing him that he's like not feeling quite ready to become his father, but his father making it clear to his son that he also felt the same thing when he was young. I know we've seen it 1,000 times, but there you go. Jason Momoa did a pretty good job as a supporting character as well, as did Josh Brolin as well. I thought it was pretty decent. However, we have to talk about that Stellan Skarsgård performance as the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. Despite not having too much screen time, his intimidating presence is felt pretty much throughout the whole movie. Now that is how you make a villain both creepy as well as a true threat for our protagonist without having too much screen time. And I cannot end this review without talking about that spectacular soundtrack by Hans Zimmer, who really did outdo himself once more. It sounds like pretty much nothing he's ever done before, with only some hints of the Prince of Egypt here and there. It truly is the heart and soul of this movie. This section now is going to be quite short. The criticisms. Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I really won't say much here. I'm not much of a nitpicker, But if there was one scene that disappointed me, it's probably the battle scene, with the main offender being the shields. The bow battle became sort of like a bit of a mess. However, it's important to say that this movie has some truly impressive action sequences. The first appearance of the Sandworm, for example, was out of this world action. Again, sorry for the pun. With the building of tension as we see the worm sort of move further and further towards them, which ends up into a full-blown rescue mission, with Paul and the rest of the Atreides crew doing their best to save the workers. This was a marvelous scene, one elevated, as I said, by the brilliant soundtrack. Needless to say, Dune has truly impressed me. If one had to ask me, what are some of your favorite movies from the past few years, I would mention Blade Runner 2049, Arrival, Sicario. And it's not a coincidence, they've all been directed by the same guy, Denis Villeneuve. The guy just makes beautiful movies that are made for me, the kind of movies I want to watch, with stunning visuals, a great cast, an impressive world to explore, and a breathtaking soundtrack. Dune deserves all the praise it has been getting and more. I only hope that Dune Part 2 will live up to the standards of the first one, but with Denis Villeneuve at its helm, I can enter the movie theater in 2023 confident that I will not be disappointed. What about the rating? Well, Dune Part 1 receives a very well-deserved 4.5 out of 5 and doesn't get a 5 simply because we do not get a culmination of the whole story. But it is well worth the watch, and I hope you and everyone you know goes to watch it and enjoys it as much as I did in the cinemas. Please do watch this on your cinemas, not on the television or on a mobile screen. Don't do yourself that disservice. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that review. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on this video, and please do consider subscribing. Cheers, and I'll see you guys next time right here on Adlib Talk.